Hello and welcome to Weekly Open. My name is Brian. I'm here with Cred and Don. We'll get to all the things that you want to hear in just a moment. First, I want to tell you about our friends over at FTX. Go to weeklyopen.com/FTX. Make a trade there today. It is seamless to go directly from one asset to the other. Also earn yield on your tokens. Track your portfolio as you've known and loved. Zero slippage. Well, I don't know. It depends on how your size is for that slippage, but it should be low slippage for most orders, and zero fees is what I was trying to say there. Thanks to them for being our partners. weeklyopen.com/FTX. Let's get to the show. Gentlemen, how you doing? Cred, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be looking at Duck's monthly chart because it's just nice to be able to make the argument that you've got to give these things time. This is what we always clash heads on and slightly disagree on the few times that we do. Like, I'll have a high time frame level and I'm like, oh, well, it's like a monthly. So you've got to give it like, I don't know, at least a couple months. For Don, if it's like a monthly and it doesn't immediately teleport price like 10,000% on the first test, he's like, oh, well, look, it's been tested so many times, it's doing nothing. It's like, relax, man. If this were an hourly chart, right? You had hourly support and it was like 2 hours on top of the level, no one would complain. It would seem like a pretty reasonable trade-off. My whole idea is that generally speaking, this support resistance nonsense kind of scales with time. So higher time frame stuff needs more time to be allowed to unfold. Lower time frame stuff needs less time, etc. Monthly chart, good, thank God. Candlestick line make Boing is still a potential source of edge in the crypto market, which is nice.
Candlestick line make Boing is all I need to hear to be happy, Ken. Assuming the Boing is northward. The monthly looks good. How can you blame a man for putting that chart up there? Especially if he's long. Don, are you long?
No, I'm not. I just came back. I just legitimately just came back from holiday.
Like, you're waiting for this monthly confirmation.
No, I mean, I bought the monthly ages ago, but I sold it pretty much like a few days after. Yeah. No, I mean, it does look good though. Like, I'm not complaining. Like, it looks like it wants to range between like 36 to 60K. Bunch of people in chat are like, Duck's still bearish. I don't know what I said last week, but I don't think it was super bearish. I'd be very, very surprised.
It was just me trolling you for sounding so bored because we were like, the market's literally at the most do or die structure that exists. I was like, yeah, it's been tested a lot. I don't know. I'm going on holiday. Bye. It's like, fuck, dude. What's it going to take to make you care about this market? It nukes, looks weak on a bounce. It moons, it's up too far. There's a thermonuclear holocaust outside your house. You don't care. It's like, we need to lift this man out of apathy. So hopefully this monthly move is one way to do it.
I mean, it's a range, If I'm gonna be excited above 60K. That's where you're gonna see.
I feel like it's safe
You'll
to
be
say.
Excited at the top. That's what he's saying.
I feel like basically it's safe to say that Don's apathy is Cred's grievance of the week. Maybe more than the week. Yeah.
lifetime grievance.
Don, how are you doing? You heard you've been out and about, maybe with some show sponsors of ours.
Yeah, I've been partying with the FTX guys basically at Tomorrowland. It was a lot of fun actually. Very, very degenerate in general. Like, I mean, I guess that's just Tomorrowland, but it was fucking wild. I loved it though. A lot of fun. Good, like not good snow, but good snowboarding anyway. And the parties were legendary, so can't complain.
Nice. Well, I was gone last week, as people know, and I'm happy to share that I was actually in Santa Fe with my team, and it was great. Santa Fe is a big, it's a big art scene, so we actually saw some stuff that was like artsy, but not NFTs. So I feel like my grievance is kind of like why not why not NFTs, So we went to a couple of places that they're even digital arts. I'm going to show them. So this place called Meow Wolf, very cool. Another place called Art Vault. But Meow Wolf is a total trip. I feel like you need to take some of the degenerate substances that you may or may not have been around or consumed, Don, and then go to this place. But yeah, I don't know if it's a grievance or a relief that there's like this concept of art without NFTs, but we experienced it this last week. Meow Wolf was super cool. Apparently seeded by George R. Martin, by the way, totally random. He like paid for this first one, and the place is just a total trip. You go in every room, and then you like walk through a refrigerator to another weirder room and stuff like that.
Sounds like Inverse Bras life, to be honest.
It's basically Inverse Bras life. But yeah, I had a great time in Santa Fe. I have no significant grievance, so I had to make one up, and might as well be about JPEGs.
I thought we nuked the grievance section because Don, of all people, was the one. Oh, we'll start the show off on a negative note, so we shouldn't do it. I'm like, okay, I guess, Mr. Upbeat. So well, it's okay. You don't need to pigeonhole yourself.
You had such a great complaint about Don. I just was winging it there, Cred. You know,
fine. I could do a season just of content made up from Don grievances.
Yeah, they anyway, so I had fun in Santa Fe. Saw a lot of IRL art that was inspirational, and I got to be on my team. So it's not quite a grievance to be with your coworkers, but
I have a grievance with you calling it IRL art. It's like that's the real red flag, right?
Fair enough. All right, we can get back to charts for a second here. Last week, as a recap, we were talking about kind of what is what. I feel like I'm at least justified by the fact that my plan worked. But did you guys see that, the market does not look like crap? And also some unexpected things went up. Have you been paying attention to the market the last week?
Yeah, I have. We discussed the basic idea of no one says fifth test, best test when it comes to kind of resistance at 44K. There's only so many times you can get away with that trade. And the asymmetry really isn't pretty. If you get run over on that trade, most of the time, unless you get very lucky with some sort of failed breakout type of pattern, first test, great. Second, sure. But like as support starts to kind of creep up and you're getting weaker reactions, and you keep taking the same trade from the same direction and narrowing range, you're kind of asking for it at a certain point, which is what we saw yesterday, essentially. So now it's a question of like, how high does it go as that range breakout kind of unfolds? And then also, where does it slow down? Where do the entries come? And so on and so forth. I've been kind of monitoring what other stuff has been bouncing. ETH BTC did a bit of catching up. And then you've got some altcoins kind of leading. Like I know EOS is up 11%, but that's a bit asynchronous. Generally, though, the dispersion has been, I feel like it's been pretty healthy for the most part at the moment. No massive red flags. The massive red flags came pre-breakout when like ZIL and DGB and all this other stuff was mega printing. I'm like, what is going on? Like if the market doesn't follow through here, it's going to be a complete disaster. Thankfully it did. And I'm pretty happy at the moment in terms of the alt response on top of the BTC response.
Likewise. Bitcoin, to your point, I think it's on its 7th update right now. That's a little scary, right? Like as sentiment starts to turn, it's hitting up into some daily resistance, 7th update in a row. That said, I think as Don showed at the very beginning, nothing really to be concerned about on the like higher time frames. And yeah, so Cred, yesterday was the first day where I started to get a little bit worried because I saw some of these dinosaur coins moving. Thankfully, some of those dinosaur coins were my dinosaur coins. So
that makes it okay.
That's right. So I had hinted at trying to take a stab at some DeFi stuff, and seeing DeFi catch a bid simultaneously, nice, but a little scary. Like it's the type of thing you thought might wait a little longer until you get like, better trend confirmation of majors flipping. So we're seeing everything float up. Some stuff that was especially wrecked go up a little more. Like even like looks type, some of these newer coins, but things that got beat down pretty hard. Yeah, so it's been interesting to me to see the response. I agree with you. It's not like unhealthy so far, especially go look at these relative pairs. They're all still wrecked. They just were so wrecked. I think the smallest of buys gave them plenty of upside. My question now is, are we going to be bullish in resistance, which is my favorite thing to do? Is this resistance in y'all's minds? To me, I'm a simpleton. I say where's the 200-day moving average? I will consider that resistance. But is this a level that you're worried about, or is this a level that you gain confidence in? And Don, I'll share your chart since I think you put it on more reasonable timeframes.
Wow. Bullying all around for my monthly chart.
This is a scalping time frame, as we've discussed.
Yeah. I mean, this is at resistance, but like I said last week, I'm pretty sure I said this last week. If we kind of start making like a higher high somewhere, that I could see it go to 52K, and we broke that. Pretty much, like I actually came back, I think, at like 42K from my surfing holiday, and then went snowboarding the day after. So like I just missed all of this, even though like we made the higher high, couldn't take advantage of it. Never broke.
You rode the wrong wave. Sorry.
Oh man.
Which, I mean, that was the invalidation, right? Breaking below 40K. I'm pretty sure I made actually that argument and that trade setup last stream.
You did. To your credit, you did. Yes.
And yeah, so it went from there, from 40K to like 47. And I still think on the low time frames makes sense to go to 52, just because low time frame, there's no resistance. That said, I mean, there's a weekly resistance right where we are, basically exactly where we closed, but I could still see us go intra-week to 52 and then decide whether like this is basically just a fake out or if it's real. Because if we start closing the weekly above where we are right now, it starts looking really good towards like 60K. But if we kind of tag 50, 52-ish and then retrace the entire week, which I mean would be kind of nuts move-wise, but the markets in general just have been nuts, so I wouldn't be surprised. So that's like the one thing. Like if you're bear, you actually I think want to see like this squeeze further, take a stab at it at 52, and then hope that the week closes all the way back down again, because that's kind of the go sign for everyone that's bearish, that's waiting for the momentum to kind of go away. If that doesn't happen, we actually just start closing above resistance. I don't think 52 is good if we close above 47. So like any close above this resistance where we are right now, and I think we're good towards 60. The same way I said last week, basically any close above, what was it, like 42K, we're good for 52. So that's kind of like my view of it. Obviously kind of sucks that, I mean, I was like drunk out of my mind, couldn't take advantage of any of this. But I mean, I'm not regretting it.
No, you can, Don. You can. No, I take exception to this. I was long the entire time I was on vacation. You just
but I mean, I never do. I don't even take my shit with it. I never have my ledgers. I never have my ledgers or any of my stuff with me on vacation. It's just not something I would want to be doing. I'd be fucking terrified, honestly, like having my passwords and everything with me.
Sounds like the leverage is too high to me.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the basic idea is like, this is the first meaningful, I know for Don this is insulting, but for normal people, high time frame breakout that we've seen in some time. And so stepping in front of that immediately, especially after quite a lengthy consolidation, is generally pretty tricky because the chances that you get run over are higher. We've seen the run over happen to the 43, 44K sellers, which was the very nearby / comfort range high. And that now it's more of a question, kind of how far does this go before it consolidates or slows down, finds a top, whatever terms you want to use. I will say a couple of things. The first is that I think this is one of the scenarios we kind of memed about a few weeks ago, whereby an immediate pullback to support would actually be bearish, right? In my opinion, at least. So if this started to like full retrace right now and trade towards Don's, 46 level or whatever that is, 44 level, the breakout point that he circled, that would suck. That's not what you want to see, right? Because when you get breakouts that are real, breakouts that are compelling, you want to see market participants forced to act. So some sort of combination of an aggressive short covering move, which turns into buys, plus fresh buyers in the market as well. You don't want to give those positions who are wrong, the ones who are betting at resistance, to have a chance to kind of mitigate, to get out, whatever it may be, right? You really want to see one-sided moves. So if this were to start to pull back pretty quickly or in the short term, and I know it would look like a textbook kind of support to, broken resistance to support flip, but I think structurally that would be really shitty. And then that's something I don't want to see. The second point I'll make is, let me actually screen share this real quick.
Yeah, please do. I can just toggle it.
Screen 2. Wait, do I need to press anything? Yes, I do.
Yeah, you just need to press your whatever it's called. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, you see the trading view tab, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, so I mean, these are the three kind of horsemen of the apocalypse trend type of thing. It's all the boomer stuff: 21 weekly, 50 weekly. Yeah, I know, 200 daily, and it's all kind of clustered around the same level. And that level is also kind of, the monthly mid-range cluster top candlestick make Boing thing at around 47K. So if we were to really, so this is an area of resistance, technically speaking, right? You kind of just see that by the eye test. I think what's worth being aware of, regardless of whether it happens at 44 or 47, is any type of failed breakdown pattern would be really shitty and pure kind of bear market / long, long squeeze TA or short squeeze TA, whatever. I get those two confused, like bull trap and bear trap. In my mind, those terms are awful and don't make any sense. But in any case, if say you get a push in Don's scenario, it kind of clears these moving averages, but then price isn't accepted above them and actually just starts the full retrace, that would be hideous, right? Because whatever price action you got trading through the confluence of resistance, that would then just look like a future high time frame wick, right? Which would be quite rough. And in the same vein, if it were to happen, let's say at this macro breakout level, the 44K range high, if the market were to fall back within that, in the same vein, you'd have to look at whatever price action occurred above it and think, yikes, the market didn't want to accept those prices. So breakout, good. Momentum, mostly good, although it's a bit kind of clustered in this area, whatever. Short-term pullbacks to high time frame areas would actually be bearish. I think it kind of needs to keep going to look good. And if it starts to poke and then lose any of these really important, trend metrics, support resistance levels, there's like a lot of shit going on at this 43, in the 40s. I think that'd be a pretty good take profit signal, because really, if you consider it from a zoomed out high time frame point of view, this is the bulk of the reversion trade complete, right? Like the hype, the really aggressive selling into the range low in the 30s. And then reaching the target of every single trend following metric stacked up closer to 50K. Like this move from A to B, from the range low to trend, like the meat of the reversion move is complete, right? Like if you're chasing this now, it's really awkward because you don't have enough evidence that this is going to like teleport to the range high or that you have a new medium-term trend. It's very tentative, or at the very least, the risk reward sucks. But you do know that the meat of the reversion move is complete, so you're going to get some profit taking from participants betting on the absence of a new trend. So kind of short-term risk to reward considerations, meh at best. Pullbacks would actually suck. I think best case, you just kind of want to see this keep going, to be honest, and get rid of all these potential failed breakout, trouble, resistance type of areas. Just get the hell out the way, and then we can treat them as support later, rather than wrestle with them now. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, I like that. And I wonder if another way to present that kind of, you want to see that get bought up type of mentality would be those actually show up as low time frame dumps. So you could still have kind of some of those levels, but even your hourly chart should have wicks, or your 4-hour chart. You know what I mean? Like people should be buying the crap out of it when the opportunity presents itself to show that there's essentially demand for that to be there. Another nice thing that we're seeing is that funding is kind of in no man's land. And it's not even really worth mentioning in one direction or the other in terms of being extreme, but we are not seeing like people get overwhelmingly bullish on futures, which is nice. We had rugged Luke on the time zone stuff. He comes from one of those places where people get confused by time zones. So able to pull him in since we moved the show up an hour, because we like this kind of 30 minutes after weekly open on legacy markets time frame. It's earlier for those boomers of us with children. So hey, Luke, we were just wrapping up kind of the TA side of things, and excited, or at least I'm excited, that funding is not totally out of hand as the coins go up. Do you see anything special in the market this morning?
Right now, the only thing I see is my orange juice. I mean, you guys didn't rug me.
That's very healthy.
You told me it was a little bit earlier this week, and when things are breaking out before I go to bed, that's kind of all I'm thinking about when I go to bed. I just set my alarm at the normal time, and here we are. But
no,
yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I think actually like to see. It's against my positioning, but some of that intraday volatility and see some wicking into that previous daily candle, but then get a nice little close to finish it off. We may be doing that. We always get a little bit of action as legacy markets open and kind of gyrate all over to start the week because they're trying to set their trends. They haven't had the opportunity to have open markets all week. So as I kind of zoom out of these different time frames on the legacy market, they already cleared on the S&P 500 that 200-day moving average that us boomers like to look at, as you kindly note. So yeah, I think what I find interesting in those scenarios is how do the boomer moving averages play together across markets, right? So the NASDAQ looks a little more like BTC and ETH, where it's underneath its 200-day. At the same time, the S&P could be positively retesting its 200-day. So it's a hint maybe of kind of your total correlations. As the legacy market is mostly flat this morning, but maybe setting up for that type of retest. Another interesting component of that is that the markets that we haven't been able to ignore lately, oil is down 6% today. So maybe there's going to be some consolidation in oil markets, which again could like limit strain, right, on other markets. Because when that's going up 10% a day, it just makes it hard for anybody to do anything anywhere else, just because of the way that positioning works out. Are y'all looking at legacy macro stuff? Are you LARPing on it? What are you thinking in that realm?
Yeah, I posted a LARP chart on Twitter of the S&P 500 specifically, and again, I don't trade this market. It probably has no edge whatsoever. But at least the S&P on the weekly time frame has come into like a level. I'm not even going to call it anything more than that. Just exactly where you've got it there. Previous highs, previous lows. There's like some stuff there. And also, if you measure from high to low, I was using the wicks for that one. I think boomers also like the 618 fib a lot. Because we all know that it's coded into the universe with all sorts of magical metaphysical properties.
I like it so much, it's the only one I put on my
It's the only one you have. I think, on the boomer side of things, there's some TA line make Boing stuff, magic, fib, maths, whatever, confluence around where the S&P is right now. As for NASDAQ, as you said, it's more almost EThy in that it's got like a bit more space and whatever. Again, no real edge or predictive power there. Just worth noting that S&P broke weekly market structure, which sucks, and now it's kind of retesting that same market structure level. Maybe it's inconsequential. I was talking to CBS about it. He said, even if it has a lower high, it probably pushes a bit further, and maybe you get like a more pronounced range type of thing rather than like a straight up bearish retest type of scenario. Mm-hmm. But again, from a relative kind of risk reward point of view, it's kind of less attractive than it was. But good follow through from the engulfing candle, obviously. That's about as far as my macro LARPing goes.
Yeah, I think you can macro LARP a little further and say, if you're a bull, there's going to be that natural profit taking in this range, both these horizontal weeklies that were kind of the final straw of the breakdown, the 20-week moving average, to your point, the 0.618, it's all kind of in the same zone. So on low time frames, you could imagine a theta burn week, right? Like your long options participants get a bit wrecked while the market is essentially trying to determine what it wants to do next. And if you spend entire weeks in a relatively, imagine your candle bodies basically in that type of range. Nothing stops that. But I think for longer time frame bulls, that would actually be quite nice because it's straining at a place that a bear would have wanted an easy rejection from, maybe that does give tech a bit of a chance to catch up if the S&P is doing this kind of waggle in that zone. The NASDAQ can go tap those same levels, and you see maybe a bit of extra performance out of tech. And then if our correlations hold true, and I understand I'm on the third derivative of correlation here, then I wonder if that could be good for, say, like your Ethereum stuff, maybe Bitcoin, maybe your altcoins, while Bitcoin battles its own 200-day. I like to just try to envision these potential correlations. So I don't know. Yeah, that's what's on my mind. What do you think, Luke?
Ledger, I'm curious. I'm going to jump in here while you brought up correlations, and maybe you guys already talked about this. Sorry if you did. I wonder if or how you guys are kind of thinking about if Doe does stop buying, or we kind of get to the end of that being the catalyst for Bitcoin going up and crypto markets rebounding just based off that momentum, and then stocks start to look a little bit less good, like they stop their bounce as well. Do you think, what force do you think is stronger, right? Doe buying, or if stocks start looking bad, can that actually drag Bitcoin down? Like, have you guys thought about whether or not, when those are two opposing forces, how that's going to work out? Are you guys thinking macro correlation LARPing there?
I am, and I was just talking about this with somebody yesterday, that I think Doe and Terra Luna, if anybody's not familiar, they're doing these, I don't know, 9-figure Bitcoin purchases that are all in one go. I think if I'm a large holder and I'm seeing this like individual trade accounting for a lot of price action of like that's different from kind of this macro correlation, right? I'm happy to fade into that. If I've got 1,000 coins I want to sell, I'm like waiting for Doe to do his thing, and then I fade the crap out of it. And at least that's how I would play it as a large holder. Thankfully for everyone that is involved, I'm not. Can't have that type of move on markets, but that's what I would want to do. Because that's the when you have an individual or a singular moment that's counter to what everything else is trying to do as a more mature and multi-participant market, then that's the trade you want to fade. So yeah, I would be fading Doe and going with the macro on that. What do y'all think?
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in general, it doesn't really make much sense to be bearish while that buying is going on, right? You can just sell higher as long as no one big steps up and just continues to like dump through every single order, which I mean wouldn't really make much sense. So it's kind of like this situation where everyone just kind of waits to sell until like most of the buying is done, and then you just kind of start selling. It's just a question of when is that going to be. That's why I like mentioned 52K earlier. I was like, okay, I could see that be kind of roughly where price ends up if this continues, and if the S&P just doesn't completely dump away. So I kind of agree with you there. I think if the closer we get to the end of the buying spree that Doe is doing, the more interesting the sell side gets. It's just how it is. We've seen this a couple of times before in crypto, where people say, okay, we're going to buy, and then people are surprised when prices go up every time, because people are like, this is bearish. It's like, it's not. Short term prices go up when people buy. Longer term, it depends on whether the market is strong or not, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how price reacts once the buying stops, basically, because then you can kind of see, okay, is the market actually strong, or is it just basically just a mirage based on that one person? And I mean, we'll see how that turns out. I'm really curious, because if it's still strong afterwards, that'd be like a really strong indication that maybe the market actually wants to go up and kind of break out of this range.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how Suzu quantified it, but it was something about how markets are like a small door and a lot of fat people trying to get through it, because your price is basically at the margins of what they're willing to do. And I think in that type of scenario, if you generally know what larger markets are doing, and you see the small door open and you're fat, and then like someone, you see Doe going one way and it gives you this window of opportunity to go the other way. if you can jump in on that, I just think you'd fade that candle. Like if it doesn't take a lot of people with size to want to do whatever the opposite of what he's doing is, risking off after a year where, you know, we had so much good stuff happen and you're overall feeling like the economy's in a precarious position or whatever, that the natural thought process there would be to fade that unless the winds turn overall, and then you just let him pump your bags, you know. One other component of macro stuff that is kind of freaking me out a little bit is dollar strength. Still seeing a lot of dollar strength. This is low time frames down on the 4 hour, some consolidation with decent looking breakups. And then also, if you jump straight out to like the weekly, looks like it is interested in a bullish week this week, which is for us not great in the crypto sense. So seeing Dixie up, Bitcoin up, maybe a sign of relative strength, but more likely a sign of potential headwind.
There's like someone's wrong, right?
That's right.
It's
yeah.
one of those moments.
Yeah. If this happens on, you know, on like dollar down, bull market, dollar down, bull market, or maybe it's okay. Like if you're going to do this, if you're going to start going slow, but if this is a pushy trend, then it's, yeah, someone's wrong. And it's like, you're going to see volatility.
It's like a game of chicken when Bitcoin and the dollar are both going up that quick. It's like, which one's going to fade first?
Yeah. And you know, if this dump in oil and gold, it lasts longer, then maybe it is the dollar that's wrong, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, you know, if you ask people, I don't like 2 weeks ago what they thought of the market or the main drivers, they would have been talking about, you know, inflation, war, the spillover effect of the commodities, and perhaps a more aggressive Fed tapering schedule or interest rates increasing schedule, whatever, all of that type of stuff. If you ask them now, it's literally kind of Luna buying all the BTC momentum and all the stuff from 2 weeks ago that's been driving the market for months. Suddenly it doesn't fucking matter anymore because we've broken out of the range, right? So now the question is like, if you genuinely hold the view that kind of stuff, A, still drives the market, and B, hasn't been fully reflected in prices, then this is like an amazing kind of fade, as you mentioned, Ledger, where all that stuff really hasn't changed all too much, right? You just get a much better price or higher price to de-risk, get out, or rebalance, as we like to call it nowadays. Or alternatively, perhaps, you know, if it's the tides are shifting argument, you have the privilege of ignoring all of that, at least in the short to medium term, and arguing that, you know, this catalyst is enough to shake off the correlation, the war, the inflation rates, yada yada, and it's kind of up only from here. I find the second one pretty like tricky in the medium term, but this is why I do Candlestick make Boing, right? Don't have to think too much.
No, I think you're right. So that lack of whatever conviction on what's next, entering a zone that might be at best chop, does that leave us a window for our favorite, you know, kind of altcoins do things while Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum do fewer things? We're seeing maybe some bottoms being formed in the layer one trade, Atom, Solana, AVAX, pretty much all up, but not out of their range the way that Bitcoin showed. So I got Atom pulled up right now, and you know, it's been making higher lows and lower highs. It looks like it wants to do this kind of post consolidation move one direction or the other. If Bitcoin chops around, do you think we'll see speculation move down the line and get some moves out of these type of assets?
Sorry, just really quickly, this is the most Ledger chart I've ever seen. It reminds me of sushi well after it topped, and he was still trying to squeeze water from that rock, saying, "What do you think? It looks like it's gonna." It did nothing, right? I'm not saying it's the same for Atom. Just that market structure is like, you know, I don't love it.
If I turn on my wiggles, I actually have it fading this, but I don't actually know. I would play the breakout if it had it, but I'm not too interested in this until it gets a little higher. Sounds very Don of me. But this is just one that is consolidating strongly. Whereas like Solana, which I've talked about previously, I felt like pretty high conviction. It was just going to stop selling and rebound. And make those like sub $80 sellers pretty upset, and it's basically in that territory. Now, it's not to say it's like the best trade now, but I do still think this kind of 120 something region is a bit of a magnet. But it could wick down and make that punishing for late longs as well. So this was a nice trade. The question is, will that trade be able to continue if Bitcoin is chopping without dying?
Yeah,
Don, what do you think? Oh, Luke,
remains
go ahead.
remains to be seen. I mean, one of the things that's it's easy to forget. I think like everyone kind of remembers it on the way down that like all of crypto will sell off together, and then as things kind of rebound, it's like everything rebounds together. And I think a lot of times everyone kind of points to a reason why. It's like, oh, this is the exit pump, or people are getting ahead of their skis. It's like, well, maybe some things sold off more than they should have. The same way, we're gonna have some things pump more than they should have. But it's like, in the end, these just really do act like a higher beta. So it becomes a thing of like, if Bitcoin can reach 50K and that's only another 10% away, it's like these probably will. Yeah, Solana to 120, maybe even it spikes through. But like I think for now, instead of playing them as like a while Bitcoin chops, can these continue? At least the way that I've seen everything kind of start moving at once, it seems like it would make sense, even if you think that's the case, that when Bitcoin does hit resistance, to kind of let your foot off the gas. Like, I don't think, keeping the macro and all that stuff, the macro LARPing in the back of your head, it's like just having slightly lower expectations is probably good for now, because it's a lot easier to kind of turn the risk back on than it is to, if you're already full risk on and things start to look not pretty again, to take your foot off the pedal.
Yeah, Don, you're showing it on a BTC relative basis. Looks pretty gross.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's basically, if you want to make the altcoin bet, I very much agree with Luke. If you make the altcoin bet, you want Bitcoin to go up, basically. This is the same for Solana. This is the same for FTT, which has been going up a bit. Which is basically to say, if you think Bitcoin goes to 52K, there's like altcoins that you may be able to play. When you have like a good setup, you can just take that instead of on Bitcoin. But if it does start reaching resistance or start selling off, I think it'd be wise to kind of risk off. And then if Bitcoin chops here, I think there's a good chance that the altcoins just chop with it. So there's going to be a few that go up 10-20%, and there's going to be a few that go down 10-20%, which, I mean, you can take advantage of, but I don't think necessarily Bitcoin going sideways would lead to like an explosive altcoin move across the board. I just think like some would move up, some would move down. And then once Bitcoin starts heading up again, everything goes up in USD together. I think that's kind of the state of the market right now. Totally agree with Luke. Just makes sense to me. People are still scared, right? It's not like, okay, Bitcoin went up, now everything is good again, which is good for the market, right? People being scared and people being sidelined is a better thing than having like futures funding and everything just go completely nuts. But that also means that the moment you see like one bad thing happen, which could be the S&P dumping a little or whatever, that would mean that people just let go of the altcoin backs that they've bought. Like the last 20% of the rally just disappears in a second. And if the market is then still bullish, they will recover that really quickly. But there's like a good chance that you just see like altcoins, they move up, and then like the last move is very, very thin. And then the moment the S&P or Bitcoin gives way, they just retrace like the last bit of it. So this is basically like the trajectory. And then if the altcoins are bullish, they will recover that really quickly. It's just keep on going. But if they're not, it's just going to be a bleed out that we've been seeing for the last few weeks. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Is it bullish that we just haven't mentioned ETH almost at all? Like we've covered oil and, and a bunch of other stuff, but haven't covered ETH.
I threw it out there, but I know y'all like to do your primary Bitcoin charts, even though I'm pretty 50-50 Bitcoin and ETH in terms of what I think can happen. But I was accused of only talking about the L1s I like in the chat, and it was not really true. It's just I only keep the ones in my watch list that I'm willing to trade. And I don't even have Atom. I had even closed my active position on Solana in a profit, but like in a good profit, over 100, less than 110 or whatever it's at right now. I have no position in AVAX, and here's the AVAX chart. So here you go for people who were upset. And I think it basically meets the same criteria. I do find it interesting, though, that all of these L1s look a bit different. You know, it's not like they are completely the same. So the degree of their moves are certainly changing.
I think it's narrative, a lot of it. Well, because you have like the AVAX narrative of like the conference, then you have Luna with whatever is going on there. So
thank you for that.
I mean,
who does know what's going on there? They buy Bitcoin. That's the only thing I know that Luna does.
Yeah, that's basically enough, I guess. And they kind of angrily post on Twitter about everyone and everything.
It's another maker killer, right? It's like Spell 2.0.
Wow, that's what you choose.
Well, like Spell, but better. It's got a do instead of a Sifu.
Sifu.
Yeah. Anyway,
the fact that AVAX didn't like turbo nuke after the conference ended is like such a bullish thing, right? Because crypto conferences, and you know, if you're talking about headwinds, forget the war, forget inflation, forget the Fed. There's Bitcoin Miami coming up, right? If there's ever a nuke catalyst for the market, it's that cursed demonic, you know, meet and greet type of thing. So that's one to watch for the calendar.
Yeah, shout out.
I think someone even plotted it. You know how the market does around these big conferences. It generally isn't too great.
Now I'm being accused of coping. I don't understand.
Listen, Ledger. You can do no right. I wouldn't.
I was long off at the bottom. I've been massive profit. I'm very happy. I'm not coping at all. I don't understand. Okay.
You're shilling your bags. Your
bags.
watch list is just insider trading. Yeah.
All right. Should we talk about ETH now?
Yeah, we can talk about ETH. I mean, it was doing some catch up. I think the chart that the Ducks got up is still pretty important. That what looks to be trying to form a failed breakdown type of thing. It kind of lagged on the Bitcoin breakout and then caught up sort of midway. I think on ETH USD, the market structure kind of looks clearer than BTC. Yeah. Although just with that red box, that gives me anxiety. Whatever. If you remove the red box, like any sensible, reasonable person, you know, it's one of those sort of 2K range low, 3K-ish range midpoint, 4K range high type of thing. And you know, if it chews through this, as we spoke about before, this 3K type of area, that's kind of what you want to see from a momentum point of view. It just keeps chewing and gets the range high. That's the tricky thing about these trades, right? Like you wait for momentum, but then if you're waiting for a pullback, seeing that actually sucks. So you either have to buy high to hopefully sell higher, or you wait for it. You just have to wait quite a long time for structure to form after momentum. Maybe hits the range high, you miss the entire move, and then you trade the pullback, which at that point is much more reasonable. Yada yada. That's the tricky thing about kind of articulating momentum trades. Like, oh, if Bitcoin breaks out from 44K, that'll be really bullish. It's like, okay, so what, are you going to break out by 44K? What if it goes straight to 48? Are you comfortable buying there? You know, there's a lot of consideration, a lot of different stuff to consider. But for ETH, I don't know, looking at the Ducks chart, I more or less agree. This is the spot, right? If it reclaims this market structure level, there's a really clear range high target at 4K, just like BTC's got a really clear range high target for at whatever 58K, 60K, whatever that may be. I'm just a shitty breakout trader, so don't listen to me. I'm terrible at trading momentum.
Yeah, well, I honestly think ETH is the simplest play. Is probably just the move. Like we talked about it last week. I really do think it's one of those just merge and long the merge and chill scenarios. And obviously, once we get closer to June, then it gets to be a tougher decision of like, am I selling this event? Have people bought up too much in anticipation? But like, even though the ETH Bitcoin chart's ugly as hell, doing that, trying to falsify the breakdown. If you look at it over the past year, it is still uptrending versus Bitcoin, and that's through an uptrend, that's through a downtrend, that's through chop. Like it's just continuing to go up, putting in higher lows every single time, and it becomes one of those things where it's like, okay, if Bitcoin looks decent versus the dollar, it's not the prettiest chart, but it looks decent, and you have ETH versus Bitcoin continually putting in higher lows. like, yeah, the chart isn't going to look good. It's not going to get a lot of likes on Twitter, but like, I just think the smart move is to be long ETH and kind of sit there and try not to look at the chart and fake yourself out or draw anything pretty. It's like it's a catalyst that makes people want to own ETH. I think bankers are having like wet dreams about it. They can talk about it being a productive asset, and it's like, I don't know. I'm trying not to make that one too complicated. I think the charts there might just be there to scare you for ETH.
So are bankers trading now?
I mean, dude, how many, that's already been the narrative of like Bitcoin just sits there and does nothing and ETH is a productive asset. Like, wait till you can stake this thing. That's all anyone's going to talk about. I mean, that's going to be the ETH versus Bitcoin debate. I used to have hope that one day it would stop on Twitter, but I think this is only going to fuel the fire a couple more years. It's going to be everyone, I should hold ETH. It's productive. Like, I just think that.
I hope so. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. I mean, I hold more Bitcoin than ETH at times, but my preferred collateral to hold would be ETH. I do agree with y'all about that 4K level looking good. I'd kind of forgotten about it just because it seems so far away when we were at 2,500. And then we move up and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, we could just move up higher. Isn't that nice how the market works?
Yeah, Don, what do you make of that red box you've got? Is it like important? Is it more important than the level below it, which we closed through? How do you what makes you delete it?
I mean, I'm not going to delete it, but I don't think it's a good resistance, honestly. Like, it could obviously be that we reject here and I look like an idiot saying that. But honestly, like, given that and I said the exact same thing last week where I was like, okay, we tested it once, right? We rejected there and it looked really, really shit. But if you then retest it again, I mean, what's the point, right? Like, why would you have to go back to this level if you have the perfect bearish retest already done? And the only kind of thing that I could come up with is basically because it wants to go higher, right? So I think as like an ETH bull, it makes sense to kind of be bullish ETH as long as it holds 3K.
Wait
right?
a
So you
second.
have like an invalidation. You have like an invalidation below 3K. You start losing that. I mean, then it starts looking really ugly because then it actually turns out, okay, this breakout that we've had, that semi-breakout, it's actually a false breakout, and we've seen those before, and they tend to get really, really ugly really fast. But until that happens, it just makes much more sense to be bullish on it rather than be bearish, just based on the fact that, I mean, if we wanted to be like really, really bearish, this 3K retest just would have been it. And then we would have just broken down here, went down towards like 2K, and that's that. But we didn't. Went up instead, and now like a bunch of people are like, oh shit, what do I do? And I think like, yes, we are at resistance, but it's a shitty resistance. So like, if you're trying to short this, I don't really see the point. If you're trying to long, I mean, you always try to kind of buy the dips. And I think if it like has like an intraday dip towards 3K, that's like an excellent buy. And then if it starts losing it on a closing basis, I mean, you take a few % of a haircut and you get out and you're like, okay, I mean, it's still just chopping or still in a downtrend is what it is. But until then, it just makes sense to kind of aim for higher, even though it is at resistance. I think that's kind of my view on it anyway.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to point out something. One of the things that makes, I think, this market pretty darn difficult to trade is that really for the first time since any of us have participated, and most anyone in the market has participated, if you go back to the 2013 bubble and then the subsequent bear market from that, this is the first time, if you look at like if I even turn, can I do that? Can I turn candles off? I think I can. I just can't remember how. Bad at this. Here we go. If you just look at moving averages only, which I know Cred will get hyped about this, having this weekly downtrend happen twice. So basically to downtrend twice and then turn back up, that's a 20-week move, right? So you have a prolonged period where you essentially get faked out from a trend perspective. We just haven't really had anything like that length of time in the past, unless you count kind of the 2019 bit, which was in recovery before that COVID bit, but that was so fast on the top side, it didn't trend back down again. So we really are in this like really strange zone of if this all resolves bullishly, it looks to me like a crypto stagflation of, you know, multiple years before it chooses to go further without like this long downtrending bear market, because you don't get this kind of obvious however many week trend down. If we just kind of stay in the sideways box and this move between really, really long-term moving averages like the 200 week and the shorter term moving average like the 20 week, if they compress but with higher prices, then it's just kind of unprecedented for crypto markets.
It's a super cycle, right? We've already got the language from the top.
That's right.
But it's good language.
Yeah, it is. That's to the point that we were talking about the other day. Like this is definition of the super cycle, the prolonged sideways. And it's, you know, I showed this painful squiggle like a whole year without new lows, without new highs. That's a good way to get people chopped up in the meantime. But then at the result of that, you end up very bullish, don't you? It seems like you'd be hard not to be bullish if we're sitting at 60K at the end of this year.
Yeah, I mean, the whole mega blow up capitulation thing, as I wrote in that article, if you get it, you buy it. If you don't get it, it doesn't mean you have to, right? As in, you're not guaranteed it at the very least. That big, massive RSI reset, liquidation, blow up, whole industry goes to zero, yada, yada. Like, if you get to participate in that, fantastic. But it's not a prerequisite for stuff to kick around and survive, you know? My thing, I'm not trying to front run segments here by any means, but my thing for the week, which is related to this that I'm watching, is whether the narratives we cared so much about, like, 10 days ago come back and you know, become relevant once again, be it S&P dumping, geopolitical stuff, Fed speak, Walter Bloomberg spamming the feed with headlines, and maybe it's 50 basis points and not 25, etc. Like, if that type of stuff is back on the radar and is enough to stifle momentum, that would suck. But it definitely wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world, right? Because that all of the macro spillover has been in the driving seat for quite a while, and I still want to see at least like another week of that not pulling the rug from under us to sleep a bit more comfortably. But to the TLDR version is momentum is good as long as it doesn't turn into failed breakouts. It's worth having space for optimism, you know. But if it does failed breakout, that's not something you wait to exit. I mean, as Don said, Bitcoin's 58, 60K failed breakout, and same with ETH at 4K. Those are some pretty powerful signals, and they don't usually, you know, give you the most perfect exit. You just kind of have to identify when they form and act accordingly. So yeah, momentum good. Let's see if the headlines give us more breathing room. Any failed breakouts, I'm sad face emoji.
I like that. I think it's a quality what to look out for this next week from me as well. And I'll go a little bit more specifically on headlines. And FOMC, unless it's a major surprise, then it's not something that's going to worry me. What gives room for optimism is I heard somebody smarter than me past couple of days talk about press conferences that were given both out of Ukraine and Russia that both kind of laid a framework for how a peace could be made and like a save face withdrawal could happen. And it's some kind of blend of, you know, don't join NATO, but reinforce yourself type of stuff. If that ends up being true, I think it's obviously very, very strong for all markets except for oil and gold. And maybe today's showing a bit of a preview of that. So that's definitely the biggest thing that I'm going to want to pay attention to this week. If that ends up being untrue and there's like walking back from the table in a big way, then I would look out for those retests that we were talking about. But otherwise, I'm planning to be long and strong, mostly spot, very little margin. Don, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I could see if anything crazy happens, right? We get like a crazy week towards 44K for some reason that I see gets bought. I'm probably going to get involved in that and try to target 52K. Other than that, it's pretty tough. Like the easy trade, I think, was the moment we basically took out 42K again. And as Cred said, we're basically like more than halfway to target already. So it's pretty tough to kind of do like business here. So if it does give like a nice pullback, which probably doesn't happen, and like Cred said, also probably isn't the best thing, as long as like the only way it would be a good thing is if it's just quick and painful and it completely reverts back up. But yeah, that's kind of the only play that I can see this week. Basically, like take that dip. Maybe even on the altcoins, I'll see whether I want to take a little bit more risk or less. If I want to take more risk, I'll do the exact same kind of trade on the altcoins. But like I said, I'm not too hopeful that that's going to play out, because I think the most likely scenario is basically just heading up north without giving anyone like giving the shorts like no chance to escape, and giving no one that wants to buy the dip an opportunity to do so. So they have to kind of buy higher. And I mean, people are going to FOMO the moment we kind of start breaking 50K, I think. And then 52K is going to be massive. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. So if we get a dip, quick one, I'll get involved. If not, I'll have to see how else I can spend my time, because I'm finally back at the desk and I want to do something, but this is kind of rough. Yeah.
Yep.
Luke, what are you watching?
Yeah, echoing that, I think as you guys said, I think the easy trade's probably done for Bitcoin and ETH. It's definitely a little bit tougher. I think the easiest play is the same as last week that I had, which is just long ETH and chill. If you do want to move a little bit further on the risk curve, which I don't think is unfair to do as risk kind of returns, I think even in a scenario where Bitcoin dips a little bit, even if the macro gets a little bit murkier, even if some things chop, I think the one thing objectively is risk. It's at least been tilted a little bit more towards risk on. So if there's a catalyst for a specific alt, let's say it's AVAX and these subnets that are launching and people do get hyper bullish, like I would feel a little bit less worried about trying to pull the trigger and get long, one thing you really like. It doesn't have to be AVAX, but it can be, whatever you have some kind of narrative for. I think that there's at least enough money flowing around, or enough optimistic money, that a couple things can benefit. I think if things start to look a little bit less good, maybe not everything benefits, but I do think we've tilted the scales at least a little bit more in favor of, I think the market is giving enough juice for one or two things to continue doing very, very well for the next week. And I wouldn't be shy about that. This is like the first time we've had that in such a long time. And, even if you look at how much Bitcoin's moved, it's like, yeah, the chart looks great now. But in reality, it's like, we're up like 10%, right? If you caught the whole Bitcoin move, you're up 10%. You look at some altcoins like AVAX and they're up like 6%. So it might seem like, oh God, I'm like buying the super late breakout and I'm late to this and I'm buying the top. It's like things really kind of just changed, right? So if risk is returning, I wouldn't be too shy about that. Not for everything. I wouldn't fire on 100% of the setups you see, but I think, picking one or two and realizing, you're not going crazy, that risk actually has tilted a little bit back, I think that's fine.
Concentrated bets. I like that. We'll leave it there. Thanks for everybody joining us. We appreciate you. Be sure to check us out on weeklyopen.com for new episodes and replays of old episodes, audio, ways to subscribe, all that good stuff. And then go to weeklyopen.com/FTX. They're our partners for Weekly Open. You can go there to make a trade directly from one asset to the other. Get your orders filled with no fees from their platform, and track your portfolio like you've known and loved since 2014. Thanks again for being with us. Thanks to FTX. Hit subscribe, like, all that stuff. I don't know why I asked that at the end, but somebody's got to. Yep. Talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.